We would like to welcome you to our webinar hosted by LeverX, your R&D, engineering, and product lifecycle management experts in SAP. Today's session is scheduled to be about 30 minutes long, and we will be featuring a live demonstration of the SAP Engineering Control Center. Please feel free to send your questions in the Q&A panel of the GoToWebinar during the duration of this session. As we go through the webinar, we will address your questions, and if time permits, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Your presenters for today are myself, Christoph Fischer, Director of PLM and Digital Supply Chain at LeverX, and Bill Savokos, Principal SAP PLM Consultant and Unit Leader for the Engineering Control Center Consulting Group. With this, a few facts about LeverX. So LeverX has over 600 clients. We have about 900 employees and over 18 years of close collaboration with SAP. And LeverX is a long-term trusted partner in delivering the PLM solutions to SAP customers. So we are in the business of helping companies leverage investments in SAP solutions, and we are able to deliver this using our strong expertise in R&D, engineering, and product lifecycle management. LeverX is an end-to-end global SAP partner. So that means we take you from the requirements and the blueprinting gathering sessions through the project delivery, through the post-go live, and further adoption. So while we focus on the implementation of these solutions, LeverX is also involved with SAP in co-development and co-innovation. So we work very, very closely with SAP, and this allows us to be really front and center to the new SAP PLM technology that is relevant for you. In addition to our consulting and delivery business, LeverX is also a software development company. So as you can see here, we also develop software and products to accelerate the SAP experience, specifically in the area of workflow with IPS, a flexible and fully integrated business process automation solution, as well as BMAX for rules-driven master data extension process, the IQ suite for the SAP user experience improvement, specifically in the area of document management, engineering, and manufacturing, as well as VLOX for data migration and system integration. In today's session, we will cover a critical part of the product lifecycle management process. So within PLM, our focus today will be on the product data management. And product data management is the business function within PLM for the management and the publication of the product data. So much of this data is created in the CAD applications and the authoring tools, ranging from the mechanical, electrical, electronics, and software systems. And the common business challenge across all industries for SAP customers is to manage this product data efficiently from an R&D engineering perspective. But additionally, the business challenge is to connect this with the production data. So that includes the materials, bill of materials, and related objects. So by connecting that product data, we are also connecting the people that are involved in creating and consuming this data, and this leads us to eventually this product lifecycle management process. So you can look at this as really a foundational piece of the entire process. So in essence, the challenge, coming back to the business challenge, is to maintain and manage the data from an engineering standpoint while having it flow to the business at the appropriate time, linked to the appropriate business objects in SAP for further consumption downstream, typically by manufacturing, procurement, and the digital supply chain. So with all of this in mind, now let's take a look at the SAP Engineering Control Center, which Bill will demonstrate in just a few minutes here. We refer to this as ECTR for short, and it's an engineering workspace for efficiently managing CAD data from all the major CAD vendors, allowing for full PDM control, including maintaining the versions, revisions, maintaining the product data structure and the product data integrity, while also allowing for that controlled process to release data from engineering to production. And this includes the organized linkage to SAP master data, such as the materials and the bills of materials. Before we jump into the live demo, let's take a look first at what's new and interesting. I see from our attendees here, we have many ECTR users that have joined. We also have some users that are more familiar with the legacy CAD desktop application and a couple new faces as well. So this here is really all about ECTR, what's new, but also what's interesting. Couple highlights here. So the first one, for anybody that's familiar with ECTR 5.1, you'll be happy to hear that the new and advanced 5.2 release is now backwards compatible to SAP EHP 7. In addition, ECTR now supports the SOLIDWORKS electrical, AutoCAD electrical as well. So very cool stuff for any of the electrical engineers in today's session. We're also supporting now the SAP Enterprise product development capabilities for collaboration with internal and external vendors, as well as LeverX's integrated process solution for an easy and flexible engineering change management and SAP workflow process. This is now directly embedded within ECTR. There are many more new and interesting capabilities. So for more information on all of this, please visit the SAP wiki links that are provided in this slide. You will receive this after the meeting. There's some great information in there. And for any of the legacy CAD desktop customers in today's session, please take a look at the functional overview that you see here on the right-hand side. This highlights the comparison of ECTR versus CAD desktop, so a lot of great benefits that are available to you. Before I turn it over to Bill, don't forget to register for part 2 of the webinar. So today is part 1. Part 2 will take place May 20th, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and that registration link will be provided to you as well. So with this, I will turn it over to Bill for the live demonstration. And Bill, you should be able to take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. And 1 second, there we go. Okay, hello everyone, Bill Zvokos here. I will be showing you the SAP Engineering Control Center. Before you, what you should see is the SAP Engineering Control Center already displayed. This is a Windows-like user interface that's installed directly on the user's machine. And it is also directly integrated into SAP, and it shows live SAP data or live SAP information. So any information or data that I'm showing here, that I create here, that I manipulate here, is also directly available into SAP immediately for any other users using other user interfaces, like the SAP GUI or the Web UI or the business client. As you can see, there are many different windows showing many different pieces of information in the Engineering Control Center. I will go over a few of these in a little bit more detail, but one thing I wanted to show right from the start is if we go to System and we go to Launch Applications, we can see here that my Engineering Control Center is linked to a number of different CAD applications and not applications alike, which goes back to Chris's point that this is one central user interface that directly connects to multiple different areas and can be utilized just from one single source, which is very useful, especially for different groups that use different CAD systems and non-CAD systems alike. So what we have in front of us in the Engineering Control Center, on the top left, we have our desktop window, which is basically our portal into SAP. This is where all information is entered, created, adjusted, or searched within SAP. We have a folder structure that uses SAP's built-in folder structure. We have a personal folder and a public folder. The personal folder is my own organization of data. The public folder is more of the business's organization of data, which can be done by project, by product, or by change requests, or combinations of all three, or any other combination that the users want to come up with for the system. So basically, it's however you want to organize things. Next, we have the object browser, which you can see here, which shows the detailed information for any object that I have selected within the interface. So for example, here I have a SOLIDWORKS assembly selected, and we can see over here the SAP data information and different tabs for the specific information within the system. And we can see over here, it also shows the thumbnail associated with the object that I have selected. On the bottom left, we have the assemblies view, which this basically shows me the document structure surrounded around the object that I have selected. So for example, I have this assembly in my document structure, which shows me basically how that structure is maintained within SAP and how it corresponds to the CAD structure that exists in SOLIDWORKS, which we'll see a little bit later. So basically, I'm able to see that full structure view. Then on the bottom right, what we have is the 3D viewer, which this is the SAP Visual Enterprise Viewer embedded within the Engineering Control Center. This allows me to view 3D representations and other neutral representations of different objects within SAP. So right now I'm basically showing the three-dimensional representation of this motor assembly that I will be working with today. And basically I'm allowed to create these VDS files in the background during the creation and the check-in of my objects, as we can see here. And then basically I'm able to then utilize this viewer to bring those up, which is very useful, especially when I'm dealing with large assemblies within the system. A few other windows that I wanted to highlight over here are, we have the bill of materials window, which I'll bring up right now. So right over here, the bill of materials window shows me the bill of materials or the material master and BOM information based on any objects that I have within SAP. So as you can see here, this is a very similar structure to my assembly structure. However, it is showing me material master information that has been derived in the system. And we'll show later on in the demo how I will add components to this and adjust this on the fly. Okay. And then the last window, which I'm not going to bring up, but just wanted to talk about, is the cloning window here. The cloning window is like a design copy tool. For those of you familiar with, since we're presenting SOLIDWORKS, with SOLIDWORKS, kind of like a pack and go, but it is done within SAP. So this way, I'm allowed to take an assembly, select different components that I either want to save as brand new documents, new versions, whatever the case may be, but I'm allowed to select them via a structure and then make that copy directly inside of SAP so that all my relationships and all my information is maintained within SAP. So a very useful tool, especially if you're doing copies of designs often to make either new products or a new representation of a product. Okay. Now, with that being said, I'm going to get into the actual demonstration within SOLIDWORKS. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to open this assembly in SOLIDWORKS. I already have SOLIDWORKS open here. As you can see, it's blank. And I'm just going to right click and do Open Original. And this will open up my assembly within SOLIDWORKS. So we can see that here. And we can see my assembly here. And what I want to do is first I'm going to create a new version of this assembly because I want to add 2 cover plates to this assembly right here. So what I'm going to do is come up to my SAP PLM ribbon, which has been added into SOLIDWORKS via the integration. And I am going to do Save As New Version right here. And what this is going to do is just going to make a new version of my assembly. And it's going to basically allow me to put this in edit mode since currently my document was released. And we can see here my new versions have been successfully created. We can see it here was added into my folder within my folder structure. And basically now it is running the scripts to create the neutral files in the background and to check in the objects and to maintain the document structure. So once that is complete, we can actually see the status bar moving along the bottom. Once that is complete, we'll be able to then create a new component and add it into the system. And for those of you that noticed, sorry I didn't highlight it before, but above here we can see that now this object doesn't have a little read-only flag or indicator next to it. And that's because since we create a new version, now we have it in edit mode. Anything that is not checked out or in edit mode in the Engineering Control Center does not allow me to make those changes to it and actually save it. I would have to take it in edit mode before any changes that I make can actually be saved, both locally and within the SAP system. Okay, with that, what I'm going to do now is go up to new here to create a new component, which is going to create a new document info record and place it within my active folder here. And basically I'm going to select, I have a start part, which is a cover plate already. And I'm just going to call this webinar cover plate. There we go. And we can see here I have other document information and classification information that I can fill out if I choose to. Right now, we'll just keep everything very simple. So then I hit OK here. What this is going to do is, again, create a document info record within the system. We can see that right there. And as before, this would bring my standard 3 planes, but I already have a pre-made model, which I'm going to use here. So here is my pre-made model. And what I'm going to do real quick is hit this save button here, which will basically just update the database with the latest information and the latest modeling that I've done here. If I go back to the Engineering Control Center real quick, we can see here there's a bunch of different icons, colors, and symbols within the system, which is actually very useful. So we can see here the colors of the piece of paper here actually correspond with the different statuses. So something in a checked out status has this orange or amber color of the piece of paper. When something is checked in, it actually has a white sheet of paper. Things that are released have a green sheet of paper. Then we have our traffic lights indicating which versions we're using, whether we have the latest or whether we are using the previous statuses. And this symbol would turn to red if my latest would be changed to released. Okay, so what else I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to create a material master for this part. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to right click, go to material, create material. This brings up the material creation window, which something unique from the SOLIDWORKS side, it actually has a little dash here and a default. For those of you familiar with SOLIDWORKS, configurations always have at least one configuration at all times, which is usually labeled default. So that's why this is popping up. It's because technically when we do a material creation on SOLIDWORKS parts, it breaks things down into configurations. This way we can create material masters for each configuration. So as we can see here, we can also change that description on the fly to just the configuration name or just the description. And I'm just going to keep it like this for now. So we are creating our material master information with just basic data and the basic standards that exist within the Engineering Control Center, including our material type, which is a filtered down list of the SAP's material types. We can also include Z types if necessary. So I'm just going to hit OK here. And what this is going to do is create a material master for this object and link it to the DIR, which we can see here. And anything that's in blue is a hyperlink. So if I were to just click on this hyperlink here, it takes me to the material master for that object. And it even includes the nice little thumbnail here as well. So now what we want to do is two things. One, I'm going to create a drawing really fast for this part here. So I'm going to come up to dependent document and do create dependent document. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a drawing and create this master and dependency link between the two. So it already takes my description here. I'm just going to use a standard drawing template and I hit OK. And then again, it's going to create a document info record in the background. And it is going to bring up my drawing here. And I'll just put in some views real quick. And there we go. And one last one, isometric one. There we go. Perfect. All right. And then all we have to do, let's just move this one a little bit over. There we go. So we can see here that it's also pulling information directly from SAP that we've mapped. So it has our DIR number, it has our material master number, it has our description, and it has our current version of this cover plate. Okay. With that, I'm just going to do a save and display, which is the equivalent of a check-in on this drawing, which should also do the same thing in turn to the part. Okay. And if we go back and we look, we can see what status we're currently at. Sorry for the jump. And then we can see here now our part has a white sheet of paper It's just a pencil, not a pencil with a person with a green shirt. And it's got this nice new symbol here indicating that we do indeed have a drawing of this component. Okay, now what we want to do is add this component into our assembly structure. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the old version of this assembly structure, and I'm going to put in the new one that we have here. There we go. Okay, and then we can see here's our structure. Nothing much has changed. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to add in this cover plate. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to just drag that over to the side real quick. And then I'm going to close all these windows. And I'm just going to have my assembly up. I'm going to bring back up the Engineering Control Center. And what I'm going to do is grab this cover plate, and I am going to just drag it and drop it into my session like so. And I'll just do it one more time. There we go. And for those of you that would prefer to just stick into SOLIDWORKS, you can also do insert components here, and it asks you to load it from SAP, and then you can navigate via Windows. Sorry, it's on my other screen, to go into the either go into the Engineering Control Center or to add materials or so on. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to jump back here real quick, and let's just mate these components up to make it look a little bit nicer. So bear with me real quick. Okay. And then all we need to do is flip that. There we go. Oh, and before we do all this, my fault. And all my components are in the fixed. Okay. I just don't want my other components moving around on me. So shift that there. There we go. One component in. And one last component to mate here. Flip that. Here we go. All right, perfect. Okay, so now that we have our cover plates in, what we are going to do is now check in this assembly. So I do a save and display on this assembly. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's basically, I'm just going to bring my Engineering Control Center back into full view. So it's running through the different scripts in the background, updating everything, adding the components, changing the structures, etc., so that we will then have the updated structure with the cover plate. So if we come back into the Engineering Control Center, everything was updated successfully. We can see here our color has changed. And if I do a quick reload over here on my assembly structure, we can see that there is our cover plate now added to my structure. Now, what I want to do is then update my bill of materials. To do that, I go to the CAD variant of the assembly, and I do derive bill of materials multi-level. This will bring up a window, hopefully not in the background somewhere. My apologies if it does. I mean, there it is. Sorry, it appeared in the background. There it is. So here it has my assembly structure, and it's showing me the changes and the updates and the different levels. This is just a preview of my bill of materials and the quantities and so on. Okay, so all I'm going to do is just hit continue on here. Okay, and then once my information comes back in view, it means my bill of material structure has been updated, which means I can come over here and I can either do a refresh, but I would prefer I'm just going to remove this and I'll add it again over here. And if we do an expand all here, we should now see that that cover plate has been added right there. Okay. So that's basically how we go through the transition of updating and maintaining our structures as we go through. What I'm going to do now is basically just release the components that I now have changed. So all I have to do is select my two components, hit change document status. And as we can see here, I selected my assembly and my part. My drawing is coming with my part. That's part of that dependent document link that exists. So all I have to do here is to move it through the status network, go to approval request, hit apply. Okay. And then one more time, we'll set everything to released and hit apply. Okay. And then we can see here, symbols have changed. We can see our little traffic light has changed as well. And now everything is in a released state. Okay, so that is basically a quick overview of some of the functionality you can do within the Engineering Control Center. I pretty much covered the basics of version control, creating objects, updating objects, maintaining materials, maintaining BOMs, and also just one last thing, I will show this 3D viewer and I will load it again. So this way we can see that now it should have the cover plates inside of it as well. And there you go. We can see this one has the cover plates in it, where if I would open the other one, it would not have the cover plates in it. Okay. Now, with that, I also wanted to show one other thing, which is the IPS integrated into the Engineering Control Center. So many of you may have noticed that in these tabs, there is IPS tabs here associated with every object that I select. But in particular, I want to go to the ticket. So I have this smart folder here, which is called My IPS Ticket, which runs a macro, which checks the system to see if there are any tickets available in the system where I have a decision. So I go to My IPS Ticket here, I do a refresh, I do have a ticket, number 670. If I select that and I come over here, I can see it has some basic information of who created it, what's the number, etc. In the structure data, I actually linked my SOLIDWORKS assembly, my previous one, to the ticket, so I can see any linked objects to the ticket. But then more in detail, I can make decisions on a ticket, which here, as you can see, I have a task, which is why it showed up here, where I can make my decision on the ticket and add my comments. I can see the notes if there are any in the system. But then moreover, and I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger here, you can see the workflow itself. So you can see this one actually has 3 different workflows on it. But inside the utilized workflows, I can insert workflows, I can end a workflow, or if I had just inserted it, I can start a workflow. And then not only that, I can see the workflow as it exists below. And if there are different tasks where there are users assigned, I can add users by hitting the add button here, in which case I can give them a role, and I can select their users by going into SAP and doing a search or typing in their username. So as you can see here, or I can just add in a role to a particular task, which are all the roles that have been configured in IPS for this function. Okay, and that's basically how we've integrated the IPS process into the Engineering Control Center. We have added these different functions, so basically the users can utilize IPS directly from in the Engineering Control Center. And there's also different ways to navigate directly to IPS. You can display a ticket, you can create a ticket, and you can go to the ticket navigator. Also, what you can do is the same thing exists within a folder. I can create an IPS ticket here on the fly. And if I right click on a ticket, I can display it, I can create it, I can go to the navigator. And last but not least, there's a particular search mask that has been created for an IPS ticket. So if we do search ticket here, and I just call this one test, it allows me to search for any IPS ticket. So if I do 670, for example, or let's just do 670 and 67 star, like so. It'll give me all the 67 tickets that exist within the system. I think I am right at time. So thank you all very much for your attention. I hope that this was very informative and useful to you, and I hope you all have a very nice day. I think Chris and I might try and stay on for a few more extra minutes for those of you that can stay, just to kind of go over questions and see if there's any other information you want. And for the rest of you, thank you very much and have a great day.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bill. We have a lot of questions. I've been answering these as they are coming in. So yeah, Bill, let's stay on for about 3 to 5 more minutes. Whoever has time, please feel free to stay on and we'll get to your questions. So I answered a lot of them, but that's also why we have Bill. So he's really expert in CAD as well as the PLM consulting. So the tough questions I'll hand over to Bill.
Okay.
One of them here is on cloning. So can cloning create a new part number instead of a new version?
Yes, the answer is it can indeed. And what I can do is for some of these, it might be just as easy to show just a few of the menus. So for So for example, in cloning, and let me remove what I currently have here, my apologies. So let's just say I were to take this assembly and put it in my cloning window, and I go into the cloning interface. There are a number of different options that exist here. New internal number would be that new number that you are talking about. A new version would be the new version, as I mentioned before. So you can do both. There is also the ability to replace, insert, and delete components as well within the cloning window itself. So it is very versatile when it comes to what you can do. And you can do combinations. It's not as if I have to do a new internal for everything or a new version for everything. I can do new internal for one, new version for the other. I can do manual for another. It really depends. You can really kind of blend any of the concepts that you want within it.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Another one on IPS integration, whether it can be used for all document types. So question is, can the user drag and drop a folder on a ticket and have it add all the content of the folder to the ticket?
Not as of yet. We're still working on trying to get the drag and drop to work seamlessly with the IPS integration in the Engineering Control Center. Because of the different Engineering Control Center releases between 5.1, 5.2, and the different S4s, the ones and the 1.1s, the GOS objects or the GOS objects, dragging and dropping can be a little temperamental. So we're still working on getting it perfected for each system. Okay. So it's still not in the full release, the drag and drop yet, but we are working on it. Excellent.
So we will keep you posted on that release. Other question, Bill, within ECTR, is there an ability to see other SAP objects that are linked to the DIRs, the document info records in SAP? So yes, things like notifications, work orders, equipments, functional locations.
Yes, so you are able, so there is the linked objects area here, and obviously mine is only going to show, whatever linked objects I currently have to my item, right? But that being said, and whoops, sorry, I meant to click structure data. That being said, though, while this is coming up, if you look here, when I right click on the Engineering Control Center, even if I were to hit add or new, there is a number of different ones configured on my system, and you can technically configure this to have every object be able to be added or created from the Engineering Control Center, any object that exists in SAP. And if they are linked, you will see any of those links that exist. So whether it's a change master, equipment master, functional location, if it is linked to a document info record of any kind, you will see those links. And as I said before, within the folders, the benefit of the Engineering Control Center is I am not limited to just putting documents in my folder. I can have material masters within my folder. I can have engineering records, change masters, functional locations, equipment masters. Anything can be organized in the folders, which is that kind of boost from, let's say, SAP's old SAP EasyDMS document folder structures.
Okay, excellent. And then we have one last question, and then we'll drop. Is there a were used for versions of parts? And this is related to CDesk finding all assemblies, just the part, number that goes into it. So what does it look like in ECTR?
Yep. So there's actually, as you can see here, there's a number of different types of, let's call it smart searches that the system does. So there is a where reference, and the where reference breaks things down into in folders, as well as, let's go to this part. You can do a where reference in document structures, and there is a this version and all versions option. Obviously, this part is brand new, so it's only used in one, but there is a where reference in document structures for this version, and then there would have been another option for all versions if it was used in other ones. And then obviously in folders. Not only that, you can go directly to the top level where used, right? So whatever the highest top level component where that is used, the largest assembly, top level assembly. Then there's also, if you've made copies of it. So if you use the clone or you use the save as new document and made a copy of it, you can see any direct copies, meaning this was copied directly to this one, or all copies, meaning this one was the first in the sequence, but it was copied 6 times, and now it's gone to six different iterations. You can actually go all the way back, and there's also a sequence of sources to see which was the origin. So for example, for this assembly, we can see sequence of sources. We can see there was one assembly, there was two assemblies, there were three assemblies. So this is actually the third assembly in that line. So this was actually, there was a copy from here to here, and then a new version from here to here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And then one last question. Can bombs be added to folders as well?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yes, they can.
Great. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are more questions coming in, but yes, question answer portion will be included in the recording. We will also provide you written feedback. So thank you so much for joining.